Happy Next Fest, everyone. That's right, it's that time of year where you decide to download a bunch of games, forget to play them, and then shamefully uninstall them a few weeks later. But not this year. Instead of going crazy and downloading dozens of games that I'll forget to touch, I limited myself to one per day. That's right, only one game every day of the Next Fest. And depending on how much work I have to do in the next week, there should be one video per day as well. God, that was a dumb thing to say. The first game I checked out was Ferocious. All caps, non-stop action, dinosaurs and mercenaries on an uncharted island. Can you survive this ferocious encounter? Wait, why does it sound like Far Cry with dinosaurs? So if I'm gonna be real, my first impressions are actually positive because I opened up the settings menu and I was greeted with some amazing things. One, you can turn off harvesting animations. That's right, get out of here, Red Dead Redemption, with your 30-second animations. What's wrong with you? I don't want to watch that. Do you know what I want to do? Fight dinosaurs. Second, yellow paint can be turned off. Oh, man, what a feature. This is something I've been talking about on stream for a while now. Like, just turn that yellow paint into a mesh that has a toggle option, and that's it. The other bonus is that when this gets turned off, or it gets added on as an option, we never have to talk about yellow paint ever again, right? We started off the year with a debate about yellow paint. Do you guys remember that? Anyways, I am genuinely impressed with the amount of options that you can toggle on and off in the settings. The crosshair can be enabled, disabled, or made dynamic, which seems kind of cool. There's highlighting of enemies that can be turned off. It's great. I always say the more options that you can give a player, the better. There's even an arachnophobia mode and a scoliosis. It's the fear of centipedes, whatever that is. Look, I have a degree in computer science, not in pronouncing words right. Or in centipedes. A big thing to note is the devs are pretty upfront about the current status of the demo. The game is still heavily under development, and that is exemplified by Chapter 1 of the game being just described in text and brief video snippets, and that's it. I have to do that again, don't I? Loading into the demo even starts up with this bright white box that has instructions and like your equipment that you pick up on it. Also gives you like a quick summary of Chapter 1 as well. So at this point, I have several criticisms I'd like to point out with the demo, but I'm going to wait until the middle or end segment here, okay? So first off, the save system is a bit brutal if you're not used to no autosave games, right? Like, there's no autosaves at all. Something I found out the hard way. You save at campfires that are, thankfully, plentiful, but remember, there's only one in the starting area if you want to test the climbing features. So after redoing the intro again, I decided to turn off the harvesting animations because the extreme camera shake was a bit off-putting. That being said, it doesn't turn off all of the harvesting animations, which is a bit weird. One thing I do want to point out, looking back at my footage that Steam captured, there's a lot of stuttering, but that wasn't there when I was actively playing the game. How long has that been on? Fucking fancy ass cameras accidentally turning on the fucking follow feature. God damn it. How much of this do I have to redo? I only stuttered once, and that was during a pretty big gunfight at the end with a lot of physics interactions going on. So, getting into the actual game itself, you're playing a character named San Win, who shipwrecks on this island and sees his brother being captured by mercenaries and dragged away. It very much does remind me of Far Cry, but instead of one massive open map, each chapter seems to be its own separate map that is still pretty large with optional objectives and ruins to explore. There's a light survival system in it, and that's when you're like collecting resources, you're doing a little bit of crafting, that sort of thing. The tutorial explains how to craft different things, but it's different than what you need to do in the demo. In fact, there are a few things that the tutorials describe that aren't how the game currently functions, which is okay. I mean, it is an early access demo, but it will impact how people look at your game and remember it, which is just something to keep in mind if you're the developers. So, with the map as big as it is, there are a few cool things that you can do to guide your way. For example, if you look up into the sky, you can see parrots flying over your current main objective. Very cool. The other thing you can do is you can turn on the yellow paint. Don't do it. Making your way to where you think your brother might be held, you see a strange dinosaur in the distance that disappears as you get close. You fight some large scorpion creatures. My biggest reference here are the Pomano scorpions from Ark. Sorry about that. which take several gunshots or, more importantly, one spear throw. Part of the survival aspect here is you also have to clean your gun using acidic mushrooms that you find. Keeping your firearms maintained keeps them from jamming, which is a neat feature and not as frustrating as I expected it to be. These mushrooms are pretty plentiful if you just stop and look around. Continuing on, you learn mud helps you stay hidden and also hides you from predators. Ooh, someone learned how to do the scent programming from Half-Life. That sounds really rude. I'm actually kind of impressed by that. Also, while I don't play with arachnophobia mode on, I can understand why you might want to, because there are those spiders that are like the size of cats, and in this game, they leap on your face. Like, these things were real, and I will not look up what they're called because they suck in this game. I'm not even going to show you what they look like, but just trust me when I say they blend into the terrain really well. Oh, the mud wears off, by the way. Arriving at a destroyed base, you find some more mechanics of the game. Sam very simply says he can't squeeze through a small area, and a note nearby says that the small dinosaurs, dinosaurs they're called, are able to do just that and steal things for you. There was a small problem though. We could call it an accident at the base. Hands in the air. I thought the dinosaurs were compies, you know, Compsognathus. So I kind of expected them to team up and attack me. I was a little bummed though, because I thought I had iced myself out of this part of the game, but it turns out we return here later. Promise. So, we'll get into this a bit more, but I'm going to start skipping around here. But what I will say is that this is where the game expects you to find stuff and then just skip past it until you can come back later. So if you see something that you can't get to, like there's a door blocking it or something like that, you'll be able to within the next 10 minutes. Don't be like me and spend like the next 5 to 10 minutes trying to figure out how to get in when you're just supposed to move past it. The first fight with the mercenaries isn't too bad, and there's a second at a base that's really cool as well, and it kind of reminded me of Fear, because you can hear the mercenaries like communicating with each other and trying to figure out where you're at. Another cool thing to point out about the mercenaries is that they can lose track of you. So if you fire from, like, say, behind a log, and then you reposition, they'll still be trying to look at you where you were at the log, right? Like, you're here at the log, and they're still trying to find you there. Sorry, sounded like somebody was breaking in. They don't want me to talk about this game. So I do want to point out this is Unity, not Unreal, but they still show off like this beauty shot of the map, which is really cool. It's cool seeing like smaller teams and seeing what sort of graphics they can use that would have been impossible even like 15 years ago for them. Very cool. I liked it. Keep it going. There's also very small like rappelling sections that allow you to see the island a little bit better or just to traverse around the map. But the weird part is you can't look down. Right? Very odd. You can only look at the horizon. I wanted to make sure it wasn't just this section because the other two rappelling sections didn't allow me to look down either, which was really weird. You can look like all around and stuff like that, but not down. The other thing that's weird is I saw someone else play this section and they could look down. So like, what the fuck? Beyond the mercenary base, you find a Triceratops mourning its dead mate, family member, clan mate, whatever, who knows. I did like that. It's really surprised me in a dinosaur game because we do tend to be like hardwired, like they're cold-blooded beings, they can't have feelings, whatever, that sort of thing. It was very sweet. Anyways, it killed me the second it spotted me. So when you manage to sneak around the Triceratops, you go down this long ravine, and this is kind of the thing I wanted to talk about with the graphics again, right? This, like, it blows my mind what we can do as smaller teams with graphics now. This would have, again, been impossible. I mean, 10 years ago was 2015. Yeah, around even like 2015, it would have been really hard for a smaller team to do. But then just look at this video. Just look at this video. Fuck! Fuck! Fuck. Holy fuck. Shit. And that's where the demo ends. Not really. Seriously though, that cutscene to me is so cool. It's great. From there, you wake up in a lab, a woman says she'll help you, and you gain the ability to talk to dinosaurs. Really cool feature. However, I am paraphrasing a lot here because if I'm being honest, this is when we start to get to our biggest problem with the demo. The demo for Ferocious is too long. I can't believe I just said that. So this is something I found out about a year ago. A dev was talking about how longer demos actually deter people from playing. I didn't really understand why until I came across a few survival crafting game demos that were like way too long and gave me way too much to do. This is part of the issue with Ferocious because while it does allow you to play the entirety of Chapter 2, which, don't get me wrong, has a great explosive ending where you assault a base with a Triceratops, and it seems like a large part, if not all of, Chapter 3. It took me like an hour and a half to get through Chapter 1. I'm not putting time limits on these demos, right? But I hit 2 hours in total on Ferocious. And at that point, I decided to close the game and start writing this review. Don't get me wrong, there's cool stuff in the demo. Riding a Triceratops, great. Using dinosaurs to solve puzzles, great. The kayak is amazingly well programmed. Like, there's so much cool stuff, but it started to be a bit too much for what's in the current demo. That's why I want to get into some constructive criticisms here. So let's get into things that I really liked about the game. The gameplay is genuinely fun. There wasn't a point where I became bored. Crafting and resource management isn't that bad, and when I saw it was a survival, I thought it was going to be like really frustrating and really stringent on resources, but it's not. It didn't keep me wanting for more, which was great. Part of the problem with the demo being too long, though, is there are some level geometry issues. I noticed it early on in the demo where I was running around and kept getting stuck on the ground. It happened later, but also while I was mounting a ledge that I had climbed previously without issues, suddenly I kept getting knocked off by the level geometry. While a few areas where this happens throughout the game is fine, when you're doing a demo and it's supposed to be kind of like a confined space, people can be turned off by the final product when they see that. Another thing I touched on earlier was the tutorials weren't quite right. A good example is the crafting tutorial that says click on 2 red growths and then press Q to craft. But then that doesn't work. That's not what you have to do. You have to click on the bandage on the right side of the screen and then click craft. A small deviation, but it's an oversight people might not like. Another one to look at is the game says look down and you'll be able to see your health, but that doesn't seem to be implemented. Which another thing seems to be that they're doing a lot of diegetic menus, and that's cool. I like that. But if a feature isn't in the game, you should probably remove that tutorial from the demo so people don't expect it. And then again, the length. I understand that the game is in a very early alpha state, but length with all these rough edges can turn people away. My suggestion would be to take the cleanest section of the game, maybe 30 minutes to an hour, and let players go crazy. With the map as big as it is, and with the amount of backtracking, Chapter 3 didn't need to be included in the demo. Yes, even if it teases mech combat at the end of Chapter 3. Yeah, I get it. I'm a Titanfall fan, alright? But for a good cliffhanger ending, you probably should have ended the demo where San hits his head on the rock. One thing that I'm certain will be fixed as the game is developed is going to be the inventory menu. A good example is the inventory not showing you everything that you've picked up. For example, I found a Dryosaur statue. A Dryosaur? For example, I found a Dryosaur statue that seemed like a key or something, but it didn't appear in my inventory. Same with climbing ropes, now that I think about it. They may or may not be limited. I could only pick up 1 climbing rope at a time, but after I used it, I could keep using it. But then I could pick up another climbing rope. And they never showed up in my inventory. But yeah, I have full confidence that a lot of this stuff is going to be fixed as the game comes out. A lot of these rough edges will be sanded down. The one thing that I am hesitant about is the gunplay does leave a little bit to be desired. San is supposed to be a soldier, but the amount of bounce when he fires any weapon is absolutely insane. It's like he has noodle arms. I liked Ferocious. I think it's going to do really well. There's this kind of like untapped market with games right now where you're either like fighting dinosaurs or running from them. Don't get me wrong, certain indie devs have noticed that people remember Dino Crisis in the Turok days, and they're starting to work on that. Ferocious devs are part of that. If they do sand down all these edges, they get rid of the rough spots, maybe fix the gunplay, I think they'll have a hit. However, that's it for day 1 of the Steam Next Fest. I like Ferocious, and I'm kind of excited for the future of the game. I plan to be back tomorrow with another game from the Next Fest and another video. I'll see you guys then. Like, comment, subscribe, whatever gets me into the algorithm, please. Too old for this. Did I say you could ride the Triceratops? You can ride the Triceratops, by the way. That's pretty cool.